Good morning. It is Wednesday, August 16th, 2023 at 7:02 a.m. I'll call this meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Oaks Public School Board. We're holding it at the central office conference room and also via Zoom. Call the meeting to order and we will say the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
Welcome all visitors. We have guests here from ICS to make a presentation to the board today. They'll also be presenting to the public this evening at what time? Afternoon? 5:30. 5:30.
They're doing this now.
All right, okay, so the presentation to staff is at 2:30 today
Yes,
and to the public at 5:30, and that will be live or okay.
live on Zoom, and then we're also going to tape it, and then we'll post that online so people have access to it.
Okay, so it's not an in-person presentation.
Yes, they are
In person where?
in the North Gym.
In the North Gym, and at 5:30, it will also be available live remotely as well as recorded
Yes.
for the public.
Mhm.
Okay, so with that, welcome all visitors, staff and ICS. We'll proceed with the item on the special meeting agenda, the ICS presentation. And I guess Lori's gonna lead that for us, right?
Okay, I am. Thank you.
Share your screen right there.
Oh, well, thanks for having me back. I'm Lori Christensen with ICS. For anybody who's online or not hasn't met me before, we've been helping the district walk through facility planning and addressing some of your top facility needs. So why they want me to do subtitles. Just a little delay, that's okay. So today, just for our meeting, we're going to talk about solutioning. If you remember at the last board meeting, or if you weren't here, we talked about how all the assessments align and some of the commonalities across each one of those assessments that we did. We'll look at some solutioning to address your top facility needs, and then look at a financial solution along with potential timeline and next. This is, and I think that's just, okay, I'm gonna move that up.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Triggered by that just a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the list of needs that that we had identified as common needs across all the assessments that we had done. And on the left here, you can see, this is just a reminder, this is what you had seen at the last meeting too. But from the internal and external groups, the list of needs that the district has and had been seen throughout the different stakeholder groups. So you have your kitchen is undersized and outdated. You have some HVAC needs, domestic water needs, window replacement needs over at the high school, additional space for education, special services and staff work areas. You have some general maintenance needs, locker room ADA compliance. High school student lockers, those are the actual lockers in the hallways, some exterior maintenance, some parking needs, and track facility needs. So that was heard across the different stakeholder groups. And then other things to consider that were brought up during a facility assessment would be looking at some ADA compliance on your bathrooms, some lighting controls, the north bleacher replacement, some safety concerns at that east entrance, along with a PA system replacement, clock system, new bus garage, and then over at your VOTEC building, the main bathrooms, getting those updated. So that's overall everything that was identified as the top needs. Obviously, we know that's not feasible and we can't just do everything. So what I did is I went through and looked at, based on our working with the district, the things we've seen, the things we heard from input from different groups, I'm gonna just walk through what I would think would be your biggest priority needs, and then we can kind of go from there. And at the end of the meeting, or after we get through the biggest needs that I had seen, we can talk about additional needs too, if you guys want to incorporate those. So facility needs, number one priority. Your HVAC. Okay. And your HVAC, and ultimately your high school and your elementary both are in need of HVAC upgrades. Your high school is going to be a bigger priority. You right now have a chiller that is not operational. You have air handling units that, I'm going to go to the next slide here. Air handling units that were installed are way past their life expectancy, and even, you know, talking to previous maintenance and contracted services. I'm trying to think of his name right now, but, you know, talking with Bob, thank you. You know, even from day one, that system over at the high school never really did operate the way it was supposed to. You have older boilers that are undersized. You have a chiller that's not working. You have, you can see here on one of the pictures, we have the ceilings down in the science room, so you can see what those air handling units look like. You also have a two-pipe system that doesn't allow you to heat and cool at the same time, and doesn't give you the efficiencies, and has had some issues in the past with the fluid that is being ran through there. You also do not have fire protection in this portion of your building, and your temperature controls within that controlling your system are pneumatic and not efficient. These are just some additional pictures. It's coming. I think the pictures that you can see, this is what we had went through at the last meeting. So with addressing your HVAC at the high school only, I would say that's your biggest priority. Looking at it now, you would get new ventilation systems that would meet today's ventilation codes for indoor air quality. You would have your new chiller, new boilers, new pumps, equipment that is designed to operate with a 4-pipe system. So giving you that ability to dehumidify and then also reheat during the summer season. You would get new digital controls, so you would be able to schedule setbacks, temperature setbacks. If you're going to use the building on a Saturday, you can control that all through your control system. Dave over there could identify if there is a need or an alarm in something that's not operating. He would be able to see all of that on a computer system. So that's your digital controls, much more efficient. And you can see if dampers are opening and closing. Right now, I'm not sure, you do have some ventilation in that space, but with pneumatic controls, those dampers could be stuck open, and we won't know that for until you maybe just stumble across it. So much harder to identify inefficiencies now compared to if you have the digital control system. This would also, in your high school, you would get all new ceilings. We'd have to take down the ceilings, put up new ductwork. So you would get new ceilings, you get new lights. I know you guys you retrofitted a lot of those lights. So the engineers would have to look at it. We may reuse some of your existing lights. Usually the cost of it, you would have, it's about a wash if they have to take down lights and store them. So ultimately with the retrofit, I could see having new LED lights, and then you would get the whole new light fixture. So it really has, and you may go with 2x2s versus 2x4s. But regardless, the engineer would decide that, but you would have the LED lighting throughout. You would also address, you would have your fire protection throughout that building. And that's a safety, for the students and staff to have that fire protection. And also that's a cool thing that would push us into putting in that safety with the fire protection. You do have a fire riser in, I'm trying to think the year that 08, I think it was, when you did that gym addition. So you have a fire riser, you could just tie off of that and then have the distribution throughout the high school. And then the electrical would be updated as needed in your service. Even looking at the chiller, we, probably be updating that service size to accommodate the new ventilation system. So this is a pretty large price tag. So this would be, but I still feel like if you're gonna look at a district, this is one of your biggest needs, right? And it is a lot more impactful than just saying, okay, now we have heating and, a heating and cooling system. It's very impactful for your students.
And this is only addressing the high school.
This is only adjusting the high school, and I'll get to that too. We're limited on the funds that we have, that the district will have available to them. And even with this, looking at these priorities, you're limited on, or you're we still will be needing to ask the community to raise your debt service. Because right now you're sitting at 9.5 million that you could, in debt levy, that you could be in debt, right? So you wouldn't even be able to do this. So we're not going to touch the elementary HVAC at this time. One other top priority, and this actually goes along well with your HVAC system, is in your windows. So I know this is for the building envelope, to preserve the building envelope, but also we saw a lot of safety hazards when propping up these windows. They wouldn't stay up, they would fall down, they would, just opening them, shutting them. So looking at this, putting in new windows in your whole high school, and that will also being able to get the correct R value or insulation value for your building envelope would affect how your HVAC system is sized. So this would be really important if you did them together. That would be a huge value for the district, because now your engineers are going to say, okay, what is our heat loss in this building? And then they can base it off your new windows, not older windows that are less efficient. Okay. Also, it'll help too, because your new HVAC system would have, with the controls, you wouldn't need to open windows. You don't want operable windows really, because you want to be able to control that space temp based on your HVAC system, not with windows being left open, or humidity getting in, winter time having it cracked open for some reason, right? So you want to use your heating system and cooling system to maintain that space, not windows. And you wouldn't need the windows for ventilation. That used to be the case where that would help bring in ventilation. This system you could have non-operable keyboards. You'd address some safety issues and some energy efficiency. And this is what that would look like. Okay, so I'm 30 is just under 13. This does address some of the other things we had on the list when it came to, replacing some ceilings and lighting controls within the high school. So you kind of get more than just the HVAC with this number one priority. Okay, so some other top priority facility needs. Let's look at that, what that could be. Looking at it, I say your kitchen and serving area would be your next biggest priority. And you're currently, let's just look here. On the upper right-hand corner, you can see, currently you have it's original. There's some components that are original. It's undersized. You have a cooler and freezer area kind of adjacent to it, which is also undersized. You can see some of the storage boxes trying to fit into the cooler spaces. And then you have a very generous cafeteria. And then just also to note, you have a very minimal serving area. So what that, your cafeteria was probably one of your original gym spaces, very nice space. But then the serving line for students to come and get their food and then bring back their dishes is in that hallway between the cafeteria and the kitchen. So that's congested and smaller than what would be recommended. So looking at this, and I know last time you're like, is that the right size, or is our cafeteria gonna get too small? We can, looking at what would be guidelines, and this kind of goes back to your MDE, or not MDE, your ed ad recommendations that Kirk and Glenn went through as far as typical sizes of spaces if you were to build new. You can see the guidelines, a kitchen between 1,000 and 1,500 square feet. Probably have another 1,000 square feet for storage, and cooler and freezer. Your serving line could be around 800 to 1,500 square feet. You got a dishwasher area. You're gonna want a office. And then looking at your dining, about 12 to 14 square feet per student. So if you were to have about 100 students for lunch hour, you would need a 12 to 1,400 square foot space. Anna, do you know how that aligns with your current lunch periods? What do you think?
More times, maybe on what happens,
More than 100 students?
sometimes maybe. You have a class of 40, let's say two
Suppose when
classes,
we're bringing in like 4, 5, and 6, we're over 100.
yeah, and then after junior high, around that time too, it's the transition period that is.
Yeah, we
Junior
have-
high's earlier.
We have usually at least 3 class grades at a time in the cafeteria, which, I mean, our average class size is 30-ish. So
How many students eat breakfast typically?
that I don't.
They kind of trickle in 1 or 2 at a time, or 3 or 4 at a time.
That's concentrated.
Yeah.
So if I'm hearing you right, you said you have 3 classes and
3 grades.
3 grades, and there's about 30 students per grade,
30 to 40.
30 to 40. So maybe between that 90 to 120.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're right on that line.
Yeah. Yep.
Keeping in mind that the projection of students is to decline. We hope that's not the case, but. So that's what we decide for maintaining our increase.
And right now, this cafeteria is in blue. And this is a budgeting purpose too, but in blue is 1,500 square feet. And what I have highlighted in red is 3,000 square. Maybe a little shy of 3,000. Kind of depends on what we do with like the hallways. There wouldn't be a wall between that red and blue. That's just kind of how I could look at the different budgeting, because when we look at your kitchen, and even serving lines, we're gonna wanna say, okay, I wanna give you guys enough budget that wherever we need to put sinks, wherever we, whatever the architect designs as far as the layout, where our dishwasher is gonna go and how that serving line will flow, where's our best spot for our freezers and coolers. I want to give you guys enough budget that we have flexibility on where that goes, because we're not going to lock in that. I'm not going to tell you this is where we'll put our freezers. We wouldn't do that till funding was approved, and we could have the architect on board. But the red, you have a higher budget to accommodate that 3.
No, just let me.
You behave great.
How long is the student in the lunchroom in the time they So stand in line.
One of our students?
Yeah.
Just one student?
Yeah.
15 to 20 minutes, roughly. High schoolers significantly less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean. 15 to 20 minutes in one trip.
And yeah, and remind me again, do you guys have open lunch?
9 through 12, yes. K8 is not.
Okay, because you can imagine the guidelines, you know, that 12 to 14, 12 is more your elementary, you get smaller kids, 14 to even up to kind of 16 square feet per student would be on that high school level. Yet if we're not, if, you know, we may still have the same number of classes going to lunch at the same time, just might not have the same number of students. So trying to get that happy medium of what size would work best for you. But kind of going back to there isn't a wall between the red and the blue, that seating could, you know, potentially be over in that red also, which would increase that space. And the feel and the flow of it would be bigger than just that blue box. You know, they'd have more flow through the red. This also includes, you would have new HVAC in this space. So as I mentioned, we wouldn't have new HVAC throughout the whole elementary, but this space you would. And ultimately, I think it would be fantastic if we could tie it into the chiller and size that chiller appropriately. We would need to come across with some piping. Or, you know, is it DX cooling? A lot of times you will see in today's buildings that kitchens they have air conditioning. That probably wasn't always the case. A lot of times it's like, oh, they don't need it. But really for overall comfort in those spaces, we have seen that air conditioning is the way is all in that. Yeah.
How about the ceiling in the lunchroom? You know, we had kind of talked about that. That was one of those extra things, you know, that there was. I'm assuming.
Yeah, so this blue would get you new HVAC in that, because we want it all to be cohesive in that space. So the blue would get HVAC improvements along with some aesthetics. So that would be able to address, you know, those watermarks. And then I wanted to just include that you would, you know, whatever our flooring is, because just imagine the red is like torn up, everything's cut up. You want a floor, you got a beautiful new kitchen, cafeteria, you want something that flows well. So we have dollars in there that would just flow right into the blue, the red and the blue, so that it would look as one project. The other thing that, some other top priorities, and this is me looking at it, is I think preserving your building is the best dollars that you can do. It's, you know, no different than your roofs. You want to maintain a waterproof building that will last for years. So including some of the tuck pointing at both your high school, delay, there we go. At your high school, including that in your priorities, and really, you know, you're investing in so much of that building, making sure you keep that tuck pointing, or the brick preserved. And then at your elementary too. I guess I'm an instant type of, but you don't want to see me on the internet. I like to have like an instant pop up, but anyway, so here just, you know, you do have some deteriorating brick, and you address that because it's into that. And with our summer and winters, I mean, you don't want to risk that your envelope is deteriorated, because that will then cause problems inside your building. So looking at just those items, you're just over another $3 million to do those items. And then additional facility needs. And this is where we get into additional things that seem to make sense if you're gonna be doing some of the top priorities. And this is over at the high school, so you do have the domestic water. We're still waiting, Anna, did we get a chance to get the, camera?
Yep, I've got the disc for your.
Okay, I can review that too. But just looking at the high school above grade domestic water piping, we're gonna have all those ceilings down. It's gonna be invasive. We're gonna be, you have some old chases, that airflow chases that are, gonna be changed. I'm sure they're gonna be used into some sort of ductwork chase, but we're gonna have walls open. We're gonna be having to be pretty invasive. This is a good time to replace your domestic water at that time. And then additionally, we had heard just interior maintenance, right? That came from different stakeholder groups in our assessment. And this would be a need, but it would be aesthetically, it's kind of going, okay, so we're gonna already be doing work in that high school. Does it make sense that we address the classroom doors? There's no vents in there, so it doesn't really, sometimes you'll see the older HVAC systems, they'll have a vent in the door for airflow. You guys don't have that, but you'll be in there doing a major construction project. You have nice flooring. I think this would just tie your building together and say, okay, we've made a good investment into your high school. It's additional $846,000. So if we look at those top priorities, you're just under. We're gonna go to the next slide and then let's just have a little bit discussion before we go to continue on. This is what I like to see is like, okay, so we have this list of needs. With that 17 million, what would we get done? And this is just kind of showing you. Not going to be able to do it all, but there is quite a few things that you do address.
Do I remember from last time, the Career Tech Center bathroom renovation, did that have a price tag of something like $500,000?
Yeah. I'm gonna show you. Oh, you got ahead of me here. I gotta look again. Yeah. And that is the vision to go like individual stalls. I know we are not, with this, we're not addressing the elementary age. Just wanted to kind of point out your boilers serving that space. They're working, they operate well, they're sized accordingly. You have individual units, so it's not ideal to, it's not as efficient as it could be if you were having the new HVAC system. But if something were to go out, let's say one classroom's air conditioning unit went out, it doesn't take out your whole building, right? It's a little bit newer than what you have at the high school. But if we just did HVAC and just doing those two areas, you do not have enough funding available. And I shouldn't even say funding available. We don't even have enough authority to ask the voters to approve that. That's a better way to put it. And I think you'd be selling yourself short if you say, okay, we're gonna do HVAC on both sides, but not address the windows. Because now that doesn't really, that doesn't really make sense with the overall big picture.
Lori, is there a way to show, I guess maybe what we would save by combining these projects? I know you say like, you know, some of these would encompass the other ones. So when we ultimately have to go to the public and say, okay, well, this stuff is going to be done eventually, so how much are we gonna potentially save by combining these projects right now? Does that make sense?
You save money, you know, we had individual deferred maintenance items. We had the ceilings and the roofs, or the ceilings and the lighting controls.
Right.
You save by, you know, the price you see today is encompasses all that. So I'd have to think about how.
I mean, ultimately, these things are going to need to be done. So by combining them and making one big project out of it versus, okay, we're just gonna address this now, and then we're gonna address the windows later, and then we're gonna address the ceilings later. Like, obviously, you're going to save money by combining, because you're already gonna be, like you said, you're already gonna be in there, the walls are gonna be cut into for the pipes or whatever, so.
I'd have to think of how I can quantify, you know, put a number to that on how much we would
Just,
save.
that was just curiosity, just because. To ask.
Let me look at how we could put that in, you know, how that would make sense, messaging on what that would. You're a little tied with that first big sticker shock on the 11 million. We can't, we don't really have a choice if we're going to put in the new HVAC. You need to put in, you're gonna have to take the ceilings down and put in new ceilings. And like I said, is with code, you're gonna get pushed into that fire protection also. You know, so those are things that, yes, you're gonna say it's all doing as one, you're gonna save money, but you really don't have a choice if you're gonna do it. You have to put in take the ceilings down if you're gonna.
Yeah, I guess just stressing that the stuff needs to be done, and while we're doing it, that's the best investment.
Yeah.
Or how about if we didn't do the plumbing at the same time and we did the plumbing 5 years down the road? I mean, how much more would that cost? Versus having walls ripped open or the ceiling ripped out?
Well, if we took the individual, you know, how you had listed each of the individual projects, that's something we could show, like, this is what it would be if we did each of the individual projects.
And, you know, we're showing them if they're approved now and implemented, we could show them what it would cost 5 years from now.
Right.
Because that would be a significant.
Just feels like everything we've done up to this point has been piecemeal, so it's gonna be overwhelming for people to see this massive project.
It's overwhelming for us.
We got a little bit of time to digest it.
They've done that project up there, there's been some things where when we were walking through the other day, like, okay, so we have new ceilings in the second floor, right, but then you go up to the third floor and we've got the sagging, you know, and we were thinking if we could have done some of that stuff when it was all torn apart, you know. It's just those things that the what ifs, I mean, we weren't at that stage, but.
And that, you know, that these projects, there isn't, it's hard to see the wow value until it's done. Trust me, there'll be a wow value when they walk in and see these classrooms, when everything is done, it's like, whoa. And the feel in the room, I mean, you can just see it walking from this space over to the high school, you can feel it, right? But you don't have the classroom edition. You don't have the new gymnasium, or I'm just saying whatever, big commons, student commons. You don't have that with this. So it's not gonna be easy. It's a lot of money to say, okay, we're just gonna basically invest in what we have. Maintain a few things that we need to take care of. So it's gonna be tough. for sure. Let's look at some other things that you're not addressing, okay? So this is the remainder of that list that we talked about last time. That wouldn't be done, and I just put the total value, I mean, it's just so you can see, there's a lot of things that you guys have said, okay, well, we can't do this right now. You know, even, and you could, like I put a note here. Is right now, based on your property tax evaluation, you know, we're thinking that you could raise the debt limit up to 19. So potentially, you would maybe have another, well, I took into account a few of the smaller debt that you already have out there, Shannon, so I'm saying we're having a $17 million project, let's say you could do another 1.5 million, plus some of the debt you already have that's gonna roll off in the next year or two. You could, you know, to max out the 19 million. I don't know if we wanna be that tight with it, but if you guys were passionate about some of these, we could have.
I guess I would say I would be very wary of that. Because then you have no wiggle room at all down the road, and you've already, my understanding is you're maxing out all your mills, so your ability to generate revenue has gone away there. And so I would be very wary of getting up against that debt limit, because then if something really, really bad happens, you have no out. So.
Is there anything that I laid out that you guys are going? I don't, that doesn't feel right to you, or you guys?
So the windows, those would be, like we talked about. Replace those outside panels, they look like windows, so we've got. Take away that. Sorry.
Yeah, that would be a wow value, that would, yes, yeah.
Have we addressed the east entrance here? I don't see that. That was included in, and that's a pretty small ticket item if we use the snow barriers.
Yeah, I checked it off and I put it as a district completed it, because what were we at, like $5,000?
8,000.
Or 8,000, so I wouldn't put it in this referendum, I would just put it, district take care of it.
Just be a budget item for this year, right?
Yeah.
Do it like here soon this fall.
Yeah, but I checked it off because that was identified and you guys are gonna do it.
I don't know that we need to put in an entire new PA system, but if we have all the ceilings ripped out. You know, then at some point down the road, we could put in new clocks or new speaker systems in each class. We used to have the wirings.
We could identify too. Don't want to add any, I don't think we have to add any budget, but demoing anything above the ceilings that isn't used. That maybe had been abandoned, cleaning that up.
Is there something we're missing, or what are your thoughts, you know, the
There's a lot of stuff I think has been abandoned. That's very good coming out. I keep wondering too, but you know, as long as you're in there, where do you stop? You're in there doing so much, and just even the walls in high school classroom, you walk in there, you'll have some real black chalk. Are we talking about removing that stuff that sheet rocking or any of that? And I think
When we went up to the science room the other day, I said that, I said, I think the chalkboard should be eliminated and just sheetrock right over. So then if you want to put something up there that's usable, you just hang it up.
Well, I mean, you walk in there and you see the old red wood border going around and red paint and then blackboards and. So if you're gonna look at that, you walk in there and you want it to feel like new. A newer type classroom, that's kind of to me. But I don't know how far do you go, where do you stop?
Well, yeah, maybe that's a bigger priority than the doors. Maybe the doors is something that the district could tackle. Yeah, later and
But, I mean,
Then you said that, you go and say,
And we kind of talked about moving some walls, to make bigger classrooms. Million radio, right?
it's not, and I mean, I was,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I don't know, I just feel like they're already up against. your budget.
There isn't an issue with the new HVAC system being bigger or heavier that's going to mess with floors. Obviously, the old venting will come down. And then is the new stuff lighter, smaller, or?
I would say the new stuff would probably be located in either on the roof or in a, like we probably won't be hung above the ceiling. So what would be above the ceiling would be, what I'm envisioning is probably a VAV box. So they're about this big, so they'd be smaller than what you currently have for that specific. We would have, double the piping ran through the building. We do have some budget in there that allows for structural, to help with structural if we put things on the roof. Do we carve out, we have a big storage room. And, maybe carve out one of those as a mechanical. Potentially be where one of the units get placed. But otherwise I could see it being. Good question.
So like our envelope. Would there be a way that we could, take that off the table and plan for that and budget with that, just with district funds in the future, and then do something as far as like moving walls to create bigger spaces in the high school? To create that, okay, we're working on everything else, that let's work on those, where the chalkboards are, the walls, like Dave's saying, that are still, is it lap and plaster, some of those pieces like that, where we could do a long-term plan for that envelope, the tuck pointing and, those things like that. Maybe that would, I do that, but.
Which was the tuck pointing?
Exterior was like 3.2.
341.
341 elementary.
And I mean, not taking the window and putting that with the HVAC, moving that as part of that project, but doing some of those envelope things, like doing a plan for how we could budget with those with our current levy, and this year we're gonna do the tuck pointing. It's kind of like the way we've been doing it. I don't know if that's.
And you could do it in smaller chunks.
I was just gonna ask
To do
that.
it that big.
Yeah.
That's just kind of what, what we're
Right.
seeing.
So they can do it, like a side at a time. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be the full.
Yep, you could do an allotment sale, for less than 50,000 a year. 30,000.
That's probably just the way to do it. Going forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Well, that would definitely give you then, it definitely go back. Everything is about students, but it'd go back to like student focus and classroom focus.
that becomes a more sellable item. I mean, the Lori was talking about, she used the term with me, this is not a very sexy project, and it's not. It's not one of those things that you're gonna go, wow, but if you're gonna tell your patrons that we're gonna increase our classroom size, we're gonna renovate those are things they can see, they're tangible. I think that's a sellable thing, much more than saying we're gonna fix outside brick. You know, even though that's a big need, I think that weighs in your favor if you would go to the Republic.
Has the wow factor.
It is, I mean, it's something you can
Might
see,
not see it.
And things that benefit kids,
it does.
you know.
You know, when you talk about some of your class sizes coming up, and those rooms are like 650 square feet, that's really tight. I mean, and I think people would get that, you know, if you take, now put 20 teacher, now we're gonna increase it by whatever, 150 square feet or whatever it is, I don't know what it is. I think that's a sellable item, in my mind.
Well, I know when Brian and I walked in there the other day, you've got the new ceiling, you know, the carpet's fairly new, and then you look on the walls and you can see the plaster and lath showing through by one of the bulletin boards, you know, it's like. Yeah, it just looks kind of half done, right? It's one more of those things that we've just kind of done partial. We haven't finished that finished piece of it.
Guess I look at it as, you've made a decision to commit to that building, right? So embrace it, you know, I mean, do it right, and I think people would get that because you're not gonna build a new building. So make it look a little modern, you know, I think, and make it big, you know, make it appropriately sized, you know, and I think, you know, that's one of the things Dave talked about, chalkboards and stuff. I noticed stuff like that, and it's like, yeah, that needs to go away. I mean, it just does, and it's a little thing, but it's kind of a big thing.
Well, Anna and I were at the Innovative Education Conference yesterday, and the last keynote speaker showed slides of the elementary school that he went to 40 years ago. And he took pictures and he said, this all looks, oh, isn't this cool? This all looks exactly like it did when I went to school 40 years ago. And said, and later I got to thinking, why should it look just like it looked 40 years ago when I went to school? Because education is different and should be different. It should look different. And if any of these items that we delay doing for 10 years, you might as well just add at least 50%, if not more, to the price tag.
Eliminate how. We'll figure out.
I like the idea of. Putting into a budget. Trying to do more site.
You know, you have your existing debt going up to 25. That might be a good way to focus on that. Just my thought. Yeah.
What drops off? The first one dropped off this year, I made the last payment in July.
They have to update this.
I thought there was one going up 24 and one going up.
That's what I thought too.
25.
I thought I made.
Well, that is 24, right? If you made the payment in July, that's the 24 school year, right?
Yeah, but
I
we
think
thought it
it's
was July
July.
of 24.
Oh, okay, so there was.
I thought they were back to back.
Well, that's what you
That's
have
what it
right
says,
up
it says
there.
bond to retire July
That-
24 and July 25.
Yeah, that's what I have. That's what we had talked about. I don't know, maybe it is off the year, but.
Yeah, it used to seem like a whole lot of money, right? But after this whole science. Very much money anymore.
Oh,
That's, yeah.
But if you look at that though, I mean, right now it's a bond, but when that goes away, it would just be part of your building fund. Right, mills. And that would be revenue that you could put towards maintaining that. and it wouldn't go against your debt levy. This is what I had from the last meeting, and this would have been on our July 20th. I'm trying to think back, our July 20th, but this does not reflect last week's board meeting, regular board. I think last week is when you guys did a budget. Did you talk about finalizing your budget?
Well, budget.
Preliminary.
Yeah.
Okay, so it doesn't reflect those conversations you had at the last board meeting on the preliminary. budget.
So they approved staying with the 105 mils. That levy.
Okay. So the miscellaneous, you will be adding that. So right here. Can't see my cursor, but the middle section there. The actual levied, you're at 91.
That's for the last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so next year you're gonna add that 12 mils.
And we're gonna max out.
The general, okay. So you're gonna go with 105. And that, based on this estimate, would generate an additional $320,000 for the district. And is that something, when you look at that, have you earmarked that for anything, or what is your thoughts on those additional mills?
That was one of the things that they talked about, was having a list of things that we would be using those miscellaneous mills for, that it's not just, we're gonna tax them that extra money, so we have a list of things. Gotta fix the gym floor, we're gonna do the east entrance, we have a bus in there. But, replacement of the chiller, temporary chiller.
Didn't you put the, special ed van or?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a bus about just shy of $124,000, the east entrance, $8,000. A possible fleet car or van, suburban, something for $60,000 is what we just went with. $25,000 for the gym floor, which might be a little low. It could be up to $40,000 because that's what our neighboring school district had to pay. And then I have a temporary chiller of $100,000.
And so if any of those items, for example, maybe we are buying a bus or we're not.
Now we have another bus.
Okay, but say that vehicle, we don't use it, maybe that's our tuck point in your budget for that year.
And this will be every year you get that treatment.
As long as we levy for it, I can.
Yeah.
I think with the goal of building up our fund, that we've got that cushion for plumbing in the elementary, or some of those projects that would not be in fund.
I think that's a good message too, is to say, you know, yeah, we have things we need today, but we also need to save for the future. Or we need to be able to address needs in the future. And something that I was just kind of like, okay, so we have this, you're gonna need to do your elementary HVAC too at some point, you know, and so starting to like, okay, is there a way to start saving for that? And maybe want in the future be able to do all of it, but you could at least put a good portion to it and then maybe have to ask the voters for help on the rest. But you know what's gonna have to be done. How do you help? How do you offset some of that cost?
I think you saw with the science floor project, that things are so expensive now that that carryover that we've been used to can be eaten up fairly quickly with an emergency, and if you don't have access to those funds.
Well, the plumbing issue,
If there was
2 years ago, I
another-
mean, that wiped out the emergency, the building district.
Kirk, anything else on this slide that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think it'll be covered though.
Okay, so I'm
just
gonna have
curious,
Kirk-
just one thing. So your ESSER money. Your proposed budget is able to absorb that loss in revenue, it's gonna balance or nothing.
But Shannon, I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
So, you used the ESSER money last year to basically increase. Right? Are you this year, so are you gonna be able to still, are you projecting somewhat of a balanced budget? I guess would be my question.
Well, our general fund, I took that remaining ESSER money out of the general fund and we moved it, and we have it shown going into the building fund. To replenish that building fund, because that was, you know, yes, we used ESSER monies to go to pay for wages, but we knew that's kind of what we could take, or were you hoping to take it? So no, I would say our general fund went from 1.19 on June 30th, and it's going down to, I show 730.
Yeah,
So
June 30th.
of next year. So,
Okay.
So we're talking some pretty big numbers here, and just as a kind of a preliminary, look at what does that mean for your taxpayers? You know, the dollars, the number's one thing, but how does that affect them? And just taking a 19, let's say your max is 19, so just preliminarily, we said, okay, what would be a $19 million bond? How does that affect your taxpayers? And Kirk, I'm gonna let you speak to this, and just your conversations with CFM and who they are.
Okay, so PFM is a bonding, company and Dan Willett is the person that I dealt with and, or been talking to a little bit and this happened really fast, so I wasn't able to get connected to her till Monday. And so she put this all together and I got it late in the afternoon while I was driving yesterday. And so I didn't get a chance to ask her any questions, but so she used your current, when I say current, actually, this is your 2022-23 taxable valuation. I said, well, it's probably gonna be closer to 23 million. She said, well, I'm just gonna use what I know. Makes sense. So was on a $19 million bond, what would be the tax implications on, for example, $100,000 house or quarter of land? And so you can see what those numbers are. So on a $100,000 house, it would be, I'm getting old, but I think it says 286.
And then I just broke it down.
Okay, and then you can see the commercial property, and then of course the ag land is going to be your biggest concern, and that's $3.69 an acre on cropland. So that mill tax rate or the mills is pretty hefty, almost 64 mills. But keep in mind that I think you told me, Anna, that you're projecting your taxable valuation to go up 4%.
And that's what I believe that was what.
So that would drop that a little bit. And of course, over time, as your taxable valuation, well, I shouldn't say that. It's not necessarily going to go up every year because we found that some years it drops. Which is always an interesting thing to me, but anyway. But for the most part, that mill levy over 20 years will drop some. So yeah, that's a significant impact. And, couple that with the fact that you're adding about 13.5 mills this year. That's a pretty big cookie for your patrons to swallow. But so that's the information that I think you wanted on that. Yeah, any questions on that?
So the paper that we have on the table here is for a $9.5 million.
I asked for two.
Look it over. That's what, I see, okay,
Yeah.
very good.
I asked for two scenarios because I just thought it made sense to go existing debt. Just so you, I guess, more of a something to look at, so you can kind of compare the two.
The 9.5 is what,
Your existing debt limit.
that's your existing debt limit. So if,
So we could go, theoretically, we could go. The voters. We'll have to get the
No.
the
Still gotta do
voters,
that.
we just wouldn't need, we just need one
One
question.
Yeah.
Yes, asking for approval to bond. Looking at the 19 million, you would have to ask 2 questions. First one is to increase your debt limit. And then second would be to approve the bond. So that would be the difference in that. It would, if it'd be like 12 million, we might have, you might have different options, or 13 million, but with the 9.5.
The other thing to keep in mind here is, this is the max, right? So my guess is you're not gonna ask for 18 million, you're gonna ask for something between whatever you're gonna do, let's say it's 16 million. So that mill rate, obviously, and all those numbers will go down accordingly.
So one time we were kind of talking, I don't know if this is still is me, asking a couple different questions, right? Like asking for priority 1 would be the HVAC, right, in the high school, and then question number 2 would maybe be the kitchen. Is that a sound plan, or is that not a sound plan, or?
You know your people better than I do, so I can't really answer that question.
I think we should make it priority list, what we think we want. And then we can get a better, closer number.
I think the more questions you have on the ballot, the more confusion you're gonna get with. And you're gonna get a mixed bag, because, I use this example where people will vote yes on the project, but they'll vote no on the debt limit increase, which makes no sense, because they don't understand it. And so if you're gonna do it that way, like in levels or tiers or whatever, you're gonna have to do a heck of an educational piece with your, and you're still not gonna reach a lot of those, and I'm not gonna say elderly, but older people that are not gonna come to those meetings, are not gonna jump on online, those kind of things, so. My personal opinion is I would say this is our project. But I've seen it done where you have this costs so much and then vote on it, but I don't know.
You do have you have a unique situation where you easily could split up the questions if you said, this is our high school needs and this is our cafeteria needs. So as far as that piece of it, they could definitely be separate. I would say, and you'll see it in a timeline here, is getting some community feedback on tax impact threshold. So if this is way out of their reach, breaking it up into 2 questions could try to help you guarantee, or not guarantee, but a better chance of getting your high school HVAC done. But not everyone can afford to do the high school and the tech. Just being
I believe the
honest.
debt limit is at 50% have to approve it, and then
It
the
is.
bond is 60, right?
I'm 99% sure that you only need a simple majority to increase your debt limit, but the bond would be 60%,
60,
yeah.
yeah.
So I don't think everybody, oh yeah, does everybody have one of these? So if you review where we've been in the past since 2007. And you look over at the let's look at starting in 2011 or 2012, because that's when there's a total in the far right-hand column. So in 2012, we asked our our taxpayers to give us $1.7 million. Now we know that every year we don't get the exact amount because of discounts, people using the discount and defaults and whatever. And asked for 1 million, and then for 4 years in a row, we asked for 1.615. Then we went up a little, and we've gone up a little more and a little more. and you can see the mill levy. When I look at levies at other districts that I consider to be similar to us, like we've looked at Carrington, we've looked at Bell Light, and we use Park River. I think that we have been very reasonable with our taxpayers. You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, the caveat with that is capital, or, Harrington built a new school.
Right,
River, the big project.
yes.
And that's kind of the way, so I'm kind of a nerd with some of this stuff. So I still look at that stuff and I can go down the list and I can tell you it just rolls over. You know what I mean? Schools from the middle or the bottom, they roll to the top, and you know why? Because they had to do a project. And all these schools that have done their best to do their taxpayers right, you know, be fiscally responsible. Eventually, it comes back and you're gonna have to do something, and that's the only way you know, you have to raise revenue is through that. And, so yeah. I think if you look at your mill levy, and that's exactly the way I used to do it. I looked at schools in our area, similar size, right? And, thing that you have going for you is it's pretty good, pretty healthy taxable valuation for a district your size. You know, at 22, I think it's 22 million, isn't it? It's gonna be 23 million. So, I mean, that's a pretty good tax base for a district of this size, I think. Because Park River, I'll tell you, it's about the same size district, it's 15 million.
When you say size, you're talking about number of students.
No, I'm talking about dollar, I'm your tax base,
But
Oh, for a district of this size, yeah, I'm talking about the number of students, yes, exactly.
And so if I were being really nerdy, like you said, I would take this spreadsheet and I would project our taxable valuation, knowing that we've got the TIF district going to be coming on to our taxable valuation over the next.
That's kind of what, that was another ask, is pilots or those payment in lieu of taxes or TIF.
We have a big TIF district, and my best guess is it's about $1 million.
We'll shy of it right now, so I think it's 900.
Okay,
Comes in 2027.
okay,
See, I would take this and then I would, I would plug that number in, that when we know what's coming in, and then put some sort of a increase factor per year, like if it's 2 or 3%, something
Yeah,
that's reasonable, and then see how it all shakes out. Because yes, this would be the impact per month on that residential total today,
yeah,
but as taxable valuation grows, and hopefully we have development and more taxable properties to share the burden, the burden goes down a little. That's what I would want to see illustrated for me. Now, not everybody is nerdy like you and me, and like that, but
Okay, so I was just looking at this, that last number of $2.4 million, that's wrong. That was adding the building mill levy twice and the general once. So I took the number out and added the special back in. It's 2068737.89. Sorry about that.
and I think we can also, just as I said earlier, if we put off doing some of these projects for 5 years, 10 years, we can add 50% or more to the cost. We can also look back and say, gee, if we had done that, done it for less, but we would, it wouldn't have been 11 million, because the HVAC itself isn't nearly that much, but we're encompassing so many other things, the ceilings and all those other things that have to be done. It's just to garner some support for a project. everybody knows that if you delay, it's not gonna go down in price. And as you said, we're committed to this building. We put the central office on. We've got the two big gym additions from, granted, the one is the eighties, but then we added on the weight room. We've got the south gym. We're pretty committed to this building. If somebody said, no, we need to go out and build a brand new building. 60 million?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either, but
right now,
We can't even come close to
your
that.
quick answer would be, we have no ability to raise that money.
No,
And I think that would shut that down in a hurry. And again, you are committed to it, you know, you just stuck 800 or 900 grand into it.
Yeah.
That's not being very fiscally responsible. You're gonna knock it down in 2 years, you know?
and it costs money to knock it down and haul it away.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
and then how do you connect to your gym? Like, you're not gonna wanna knock those down,
you
right?
know,
So if we want this facility to last 30, 40 or more years, we're going to have to do this.
I think Brian made a good point too, and I appreciated this look at, you know, the HVAC and the chiller and trying to get in a temporary unit. He goes, we need good space for our kids to learn in. Like, we have to be, that's the best environment for them to be educated or, you know, gaining as much education as they can. And so, yeah, we're gonna spend a little bit of money, but that's because we care about our students and our staff and making sure that they can be comfortable in the space.
I wouldn't invite anybody to.
It's so small.
I know.
We were in
It's
there
gonna
in
be
the water
hard
too.
to-
You're on the morning and there was like 8, 10 of us in there. I was.
So since our last meeting, I brought in another one of an engineer and one of our experts to look at doing potentially like a performance contracting project where you utilize your energy savings to pay for the project. Well, good news is your HVAC over at the high school, it doesn't have a huge, there isn't a lot of savings because you're not bringing in much ventilation. You're not running, you know, like the things aren't running very well. So it's like, well, you probably wouldn't see a huge savings on every day because now you're gonna actually have the indoor air quality and the ventilation that you need. But on the flip side, you would not have these surprise $400,000 chiller needs, or, you know, you would have some energy savings, but not enough to say we could help pay for that project. So you're gonna see some, but just that, you
So
know,
the gains and the benefits are less in energy cost savings and more in comfort and environment for our students and staff.
healthy, exactly. Yeah, but I wanted you to know we looked at that and explored it. Just didn't come up with a good option to use those dollars.
What about, are there any elements of this project that might qualify for any significant grant of any kind?
Well, that's challenging.
give
Not
me a short
usually.
answer.
No.
No, yeah, thank you, No,
I think you kind of got that the way she was going.
Not until you have numbers and.
You know, yeah, I mean, a big component, Anna knows this, of a lot of grants is free reduced them. And free reduced them. You're not 60%, 50%. So. Again, no.
But I know some of the EPA grants were up there a couple years ago, I think because of COVID and, or not necessarily EPA, but you know,
Yeah.
now they're down, right? I mean, trying to find something like I've been searching and looking and there just really isn't.
Yeah, 'cause I thought a while ago, we started to use the windows
The only one I really know is that energy efficiency grant, and you've used that, I believe, right? And that's basically lighting, you know, you can, if you're gonna do lighting. You gotta, I think it's a 6-year payback, you have to qualify, you have to have a 6-year payback on that, and if you're friends with your electrician, you can make that work. But, doesn't sound like that's a big deal for you, you've already done much. Homeland Security money. You've used some of that, I'm guessing. But again, you're talking about $2,000.
Having those questions. You know, having said, yeah, we talked about it, there isn't anything, those are gonna be the answers and the things that we need to be able to tell the community members. You know, that there really isn't. You know, we have explored other options, we don't have other funding sources. So looking at the timeline and next steps, this is in North Dakota. If you work it backwards, what you need is, if you want to call for an election, you need to approve a resolution 55 days prior to the election. Looking going forward, a target date, you know, I think November is, people are familiar with voting in November. And I think it would be a good time to go out to the voters. If not, I would say then you're going to be looking at February or March, probably March. But February's okay. You just get a little bit, it's tough coming out of a Christmas season and then being able to have enough time to communicate what you're doing. So working it backwards, that puts you at September 20th. You would have to make a decision if you held an election on November 14th. There's no reason you couldn't hold it the week after, but I think that would, is that Thanksgiving? No.
Later.
Okay, so maybe we'd have a week or so to play with, but I
This is
just
the
use,
14th, so 13th.
Are you looking at a regular?
no, I'm not looking at, no, I'm not looking at the regular election.
Oh.
I was just looking at, okay, November, and
Yeah,
you know,
23rd actually is.
okay, I was looking at November before Thanksgiving, but giving us time to do a couple other things on the front end here, so I gained a week. Cause I think we need to have a board meeting where we actually have the financial advisor come and talk to the board. And if that's PFM, asking them if they come in and talk to you, finalizing that plan, you know, getting, you know, after today's conversation, we can take that tuck pointing out and incorporate the walls and classrooms in the high school. I would propose we use some mechanism to get community feedback on your plan. Because it's a lot of time and a lot of energy to go to voters. And if we don't get positive, or at least majority positive from your community on the front end, let's revisit it. And let's see what else we can do before you put all that time and money into going for an election. So I would say that would have to be then that first week right after Labor Day. Gives you a week to kind of shape based on what the community says, and then you would approve on the September 20th. September 20th to the 14th. This is tentative. You would, your communication plan.
Our regular scheduled board meeting is the 15th. Is there any reason we couldn't do it then?
We could do that too. Yes.
Yep. I see you have one more special board meeting here coming up.
I don't know what happened to our summer though, man,
Maybe don't do it as.
Oh, we just don't allow those unknowns in.
Yeah, I don't know what the.
So what is ICS's part in relaying to the community what's going on with this? Beyond tonight, I mean, I know you're gonna present this to them, but if we do take this to a vote,
what is your part in that?
So we would help you with all your messaging, your community, your literature that you're gonna put out to the community. So we help develop like a fastbacks, and develop a website if we wanted to do that, or how we present the information on your website. Presentations, coordination on who we should be out talking to and helping schedule that. Also just helping you understand what your role is as a school board member or as a district. The district's gonna inform, school board members can inform and advocate. So we can help kind of map out those roles and responsibilities. One of the other things we should talk about too is, we'd be looking at we'd like to be the ones who we'd be doing the construction management for the project and getting that pulled together. We'd have to separately go out and get architect and engineers on board. But with that construction management, technically, you are required to send out an RFQ, request for qualifications. So looking at maybe doing that here up before the referendum and just locking that in gives you just the security and to the public how this is going to be carried out if approved. So then we have a plan moving forward. So that would be the other thing. So we are in contract for the communications. It would be nice to, before the referendum, to also do the request for qualifications. And we can help you guys map that out.
And the expenses that, for your services and the construction management is all rolled into the cost estimates that we're talking about here.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And then we can help you onboard an architect and engineer. Those costs are also part of this. So it's all part of it because we know you're going to have to spend those. We know those costs are associated with doing a project of this thing.
So do you guys kind of work as the general? No, you wouldn't be the general, what?
We'd be a construction manager, so we'd oversee the whole construction and help manage the architect, the engineer. They would be the architect and engineer would be separate contract with the district outside of ICS, just because of the way the North Dakota is structured and what they allow.
So could we go with our architect we've already been using, or does that have to go out on bids, or how does that work?
We could structure that the same way. So we could, you are required to advertise. And we could advertise it locally, we could put an RFQ, and then you get to decide who you pick, right? So it isn't low, when it comes to professional services, you don't have to pick the low. You don't even have to have a proposal out there. You can just say, what are your qualifications for this project? We would help you do the same thing then with the architect, and we could invite, who is the one you like to work with?
We've been working with, Ryan, Michael J. Burns.
Michael J. Burns.
They've done all of our projects.
So we could do the same on helping getting them on the team.
I mean, they know our building and they serve us well, and
But that keeps the district just legally, Century Code, that's what maps out what you have to do. That would keep the district to legally say, yep, we went through the steps that are required. And this is.
I believe the last time that anything like this was on the ballots would have been in the mid-1990s, when our voters approved the 20 mil fund levy. That was not I don't remember it being. I mean, we approved 20 mils and we're approving, this is a lot bigger. And the 20 mils has served us well as a Band-Aid for nearly 30 years, but evidently time for major surgery here. And
I mean, you know, most of your public does not set foot in that building. And so that's a really important part of it is the education piece is huge. You're gonna have to take people into that building. You're gonna have to show them problems. You're gonna have to explain it to them. And, you know, I think back on our project, I bet I presented to 25 different groups. You know, some of them it was 6 people, some of them it was 50 people. You know, I mean, I just went to all different civic organizations and just, you know, but the education piece, again, going back to Laurie's term, it's not a sexy project. You're not building a new school and you're going, yay, yay, yay. You're fixing what needs to be fixed. You're not gonna see a ton of it. So the education piece is gonna be huge, but you're gonna take people into that building and you're gonna have to show them. And I'd get them in there in early September when it's 95.
Complaining about kids having to go to school, but miserably hot right now. So I think that's a great time to start inviting people in, so they can see this is what we're trying to take care of.
We have our back to back.
I've thought this for years. Your public comes in and eats with kids over here in the kitchen. They see that, we don't even have. Now we have our parent teacher conferences down in the gym, so they don't even get up into these classrooms. I don't know, as parents, when they've been up there in the last several years, so they don't even see that. No.
We have one volleyball match. There's still probably sitting in the gym.
I think he's exactly right there. They have to see the little. Right.
And just wait till these kids go home and start complaining about mom and dad.
Right.
That'll get a lot of attention.
Well,
A
Thursday
lot.
night,
PTO,
And
it's
you-
just like
you
coming
tour
back to
guide
school,
will
get your kid in backpacks in.
Well, this one,
no,
the
PTO.
17th is, so that's tomorrow evening. It's like a playground cleanup.
Oh.
So it's more elementary and all the teachers, we're combining, the PTOs combining with the teachers this year. So they're gonna come in and do like the hot dog feed and you can meet your teacher then, but it's more outside games like that. So then next Tuesday night will be the back to school night from 5 to 6 where they can come in and drop off their supplies and meet the teachers.
So October. But I mean,
That
it'll
should
be
be-
cool
that
down,
should
but
be-
then that'll be snow on the ground.
Yeah.
When we do the vote, it'll be,
But we should put it back in each
yeah, I
classroom.
think you're right.
How to go. Should be there.
We could actually open up the building tomorrow afternoon and just say, because we're gonna have the public presentation tonight, right? We just open up the building for people to come in and see some of those things that we've been talking about. The lunchroom and just let you know.
We could, my only thought is that it's gonna be more elementary focused tomorrow, the families that are here, so. Not all of them.
But they're
families
still
will
gonna
do it.
pay.
Elementary.
Well, they are still gonna pay, you're right. yeah.
Elementary students are our best known source of high school students.
I know. And I see most people think, well, my kid's not.
Yeah,
So
they will be, we hope.
And they're the most engaged.
Yeah.
You're. Now the high school, it's like, I think half the time that they just text students now. I mean,
Yeah.
the parents just are less engaged and, but
How many home football games do we have?
There's one on Friday.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, can we
Typically
do
4.
something here, you know, and then before a game, and then invite people to a walkthrough before you walk over to the game? Just to kind of get people in the building, I don't care if we feed them a hot dog or, you know, whatever.
Well, I mean, you know, Laurie's got it up there, the community feedback. I mean, to me, you make a presentation or whatever in the gym or however you do it, and then you take them up there. And you lead them through that building,
You just-
right when you talk, you know, so it's fresh in their mind.
Right. So excited about it.
Yeah.
So can you do that tonight after the presentation tonight at 5:30? To walk them. Yeah, just open it up and say anybody that wants to walk through and see this. And we'll take.
yeah, you can be there. And tonight, it's just been a little bit of a delay because of the timing. Tonight we'll bring back listening sessions and ad results. So solutioning or anything that you've been going through, we're not gonna
They're
do
not
that.
gonna get-
They're not gonna see
The
that.
presentation that Glenn and I did in June, to the board, is what we're presenting tonight.
Okay.
And the reason that we waited is because then the staff would be back. So we coupled that with the community.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's basically the color chart and talking about, reviewing the listing sessions. Yes, that's what we're doing tonight.
Yeah.
We could still open it up there and maybe I'll talk to the staff too and ask them if they could be there and, I think the big thing for us is gonna be having the staff involved and having them be the face of it, not just me, not just the board members, but our staff members out there. So like today I'm gonna be presenting to them budget, things like that, so that if they get asked a question, they don't say, I don't know, you're gonna have to ask Anna. I want them to be on the cusp of the information so that if they're approached up at the grocery store, Nikki Kelly can tell them exactly what's and the reasons why, and so I just really feel like they need to be a big part of the face of this whole thing, not just me pushing it or you guys pushing it, but it's them, right?
And they haven't had this action this evening, because the North Gym is exactly the Sunday group. And I think then if they go, can go right upstairs and walk around, well, they're already here, because as long as they're here.
Yeah, that was just my thought, if you have those people in the building tonight, I just want to take advantage of it.
And we could say at the end, really what the board's been working on this summer, the biggest needs fall in the high school. So we're willing to walk you through that.
A really big component of your messaging, it needs to come back to what we learned from listening sessions, right? And then what we learned from the engineers going to the building, that's data, right? That's not Anna's solution, that's not the board's. I mean, it came from all these other groups, and here's the commonalities. That's really needs to be a key part of your message is, you told us this, and the engineers told us this, and it wasn't, we didn't pull this out of the air. And I just think that's really important.
So community feedback, one thing that's been successful is doing an open house format. So it isn't a big presentation. It is going through different stations and understanding, the process that the board's been going through, the needs that were identified, the proposed solution, the tax impact. That walking through and learning about each one of those components, and then usually I'll even offer, then we do a tour, like would be the last one, and then maybe a very, very simple survey. Check 4 answers or 5 answers, check mark, not like write anything. We could even make it creative and we could post each station in different classrooms, so you don't have an option to do a walkthrough, you have to go out there. We could do that. Otherwise, a lot of times we've had it in the gym spaces, and then or if you want hot cookies, sometimes we'd have the students, like student council or whoever wants to coordinate, they would be the ones volunteering and doing the booths. So that would be
Get them
something,
in the kitchen or down in the cafeteria, you gotta get them into that kitchen.
well, that's.
You really have to.
culinary
I mean,
programs. Oh, yeah, they could be part of that, yeah. So, yeah, you're right, then we could get them in the kitchen to grab their hot dog as they go through the kitchen and out, or something of that nature. It's a quick turnaround and pulling that together and advertising it, but I think
So
it's pretty beneficial.
on September 18th, we have Coronation and Hall of Fame induction. And then we typically have the tornado feed that's in the hands of team makers. Sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. That might be a good
That would be
time,
a good time.
because it'll be right after our September 15th meeting. Sue German is our Hall of Fame inductee, and I had suggested to her that we have the little open house in her honor up in the music room, and she thought that was a great idea, and she'll have a lot of family and friends, and that will get people will be up there
Yeah.
anyway, and just think that's 2 months before the election day. It's a good time to get people started thinking.
Let me ask, would you like feedback before the board makes a decision? Because
So we're-
agree 100%, that's an excellent time to talk about the plan. Do you want any feedback from the community before you
I
guys?
think so.
I think it's
Yep.
needed.
So what's our deadline to make the 55 days prior to election days? So is September 20th? Okay, so we have to have so we won't have such feedback by the 15th. We may have it by the 20th. If we.
Yep. We're trying to target your September 15th board meeting,
A little too soon.
then we wouldn't get, if that's when we want to do the open house, but I'm open, I mean, yes, we could make any of that work if we wanted to do that.
We have to have a special meeting. It's not that big, right?
I love them.
You do, yes. The more the better.
Could we do 2 opportunities for community people?
Yeah.
Because my thought is we're gonna end up hitting, okay, we've got activities just about every night, right? So we're gonna lose. You got a junior high football player, you've got a JV football player, unless it's on a Wednesday night, then you start losing church, which we try not to get involved in, but I don't have my computer in front of me, but I bet we have, oh wait a minute. I bet we have an activity every night that we're gonna miss.
But for example, many of those nights is a home activity. So like, for example, September 11th, elementary volleyball at home. Well, is that an opportunity to bring some of those families, you know, into an open house?
In their varsity volleyball.
We make an educational poster to hang in the gym for these home events. So people could just look at them. You know, when they walk in there and they're complaining because they're hot and humid, they could look at like a proposed plan.
Are you miserable? Come with me to the first floor of the high school.
I guess that would be after they make their decision.
Want me to
They
take you
can't
for a
create or
walk
whatever.
around the school?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say poster boards, once you make a decision or, you know, something. Yes, absolutely. And then each one of, that would be part of that planning we'll help you guys with is, yeah, be present at every home event. You know, be out in the community at these places, have this when you, even if you don't have an activity, let's put these boards in strategic locations. So people coming in will. See them. Yeah. I wish we could put up a sign up that says, "Are you hot?" Oh, yes.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure the center would really.
Yeah,
I think that's over.
that is.
We know the center taxi,
but it's needed.
If you're-
Mhm, right. And, you know, the cafeteria is interesting because the seating isn't congested as much as it is the kitchen serving in the kitchen.
You know, the one thing, if you could get them into the kitchen, like in the back, and they see that dishwasher sink, and then they see that one picture you have of the floor chopped up from, was it
2
the
years ago.
plumbing and the, I mean, it's, right? It's a,
Show that, that freezer.
it's, you know, I haven't been back there for a decade. No, yeah, I've never been in the kitchen, and when I walked in there, I went,
Well, and that may be something too, to also kind of coach the ladies that work back there on, you know, how do we reply to the questions that we're getting? You know, in the most efficient manner, the most effective manner. Because they're the ones that.
When we come get the hot dog, can we just.
Yeah. Because now after they move those serving lights out, people don't
go back. and
Yeah,
see.
you gotta get them.
That could be tomorrow night.
Right, because 15 to 20 minutes is a pretty hard sell for $1 million.
Go back
As
to
a
the
kid
video.
and being in there.
Right.
Yeah, that's very
We'll make
tough
sure
sell.
we can't see. So right now you put stationary, you put your serving lines out in the cafeteria, you just move them all.
They could have more room there.
But that only started. Right.
So,
Yeah, tomorrow night they came in that door, to get their hot dog ready. Right.
we put the serving line back where it originally was to make it difficult. I mean.
Every day.
I think that's what punishment. on
Yeah.
cooks. No,
Home safe. Terrible.
It's punishment on those kids too, because that is horrid going through that serving line. Just serving up those lingers. All right, anything else we need to cover? We've done a lot of brainstorming here about messaging and we don't need to make a decision on anything today. But we anticipate a special meeting at the end of the month. And what's the purpose of that again?
to bring in. PFM,
Okay,
and then also to finalize a plan that you'd want to bring to to get feedback from the.
so you'd have like updated costs if we take out the tuck pointing and.
Yeah.
But. A lot. Yeah. Given that we're adopting, Fridays as our board meeting days, would September 1st work? I'm available, I'm not no. I can't. I'm not available at 28. That's a version. 29th, 30th, 31st. Thursdays work. Thursdays, okay.
That'll be fine.
31st. Yeah. Then, I think we can leave it to our administration and ICS to plan the sort of public messaging, as taking into consideration the input that board members have given today. Our regular board meeting is scheduled for the 15th. And we will, I think, want then a special to review feedback that's received from the public in the time period from August 31st to September 19th. Yeah. Well, no, we have to do it we can't do it any later than the 20th because of the 55 days ahead of this November 14th.
Yeah, and I stuck with the Tuesday for November. I think that.
It just makes sense.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, yeah, I was just thinking that November 21st gets kind of close to things. That's a week of Thanksgiving, and you might lose people with.
So then the purpose of the 20th meeting would be for us to hear the input from the public on the plan as we had previously seen it. And we have to adopt a resolution to have an election, to hold an election, and all of that would be prepared for us. The resolution would be, here are the one question or the two questions that we'll have, or three if that's what's thought best at the time. And we have to take that action at that time and set the election. And then really there would be additional messaging and
We move it to referendum campaign communication.
make sense?
So.
Makes sense. Here's a crap on our
Here's my, what the next is, we're gonna have a next special meeting on the 31st. Okay.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. Yep. And then I have September 15th.
That's
That's our regular meeting, that's what.
20th at 7 a.m.
Next week I'm on for work, so,
The 20th.
yeah. I'll just tell my. No, just, it's fine, just leave it, I'll worry about it later.
Just that if we're trying to gather information on the 18th, the Hall of Fame and coronation evening open house. For the input that's gathered on the evening of the 18th, it's a little bit of a rush to get that compiled for the board by 7 a.m.
Well, I get that, but would it be work better to have everybody here and move it to after an evening on the 19th?
It won't matter.
It won't matter.
I have to go to campground.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's really enjoyable.
As much as special meeting.
Okay, I tried.
Almost more. Nothing better than 3 days.
All right, anything else? Lori, Kirk, anything last words you'd like to add?
You know, one thing that, I was thinking of, you know, one of the other things that Anna was asking you about if you go to referendum. And one of the things that was really helpful was helping, form a vote yes committee. That was, I remember, Glenn kind of helped me get that organized, got that group separate from the school. And that was tremendous help, and we would help you get that organized and give you some ideas and how to get that going too, so.
And that has to be just public people, I mean,
Well, it doesn't have to be, but it's best that it is. It's best that it's people not involved with the school.
right, that's what I.
No, usually it's a school, like some leaders of the staff, they usually do it, they just cannot utilize, staff resources.
You can't use.
Or
your district funds.
district funds, yeah,
um,
so like,
When
yeah.
we did it, when we had it, it was nobody had anything to do with the school. It was all,
Oh, okay. A lot of times we have teachers involved. But I think, go ahead.
Again,
well, you know who those people are. in the community. I'm sure you come up with that list in 5 minutes.
I would find it helpful if Lori or Anna would share out your presentation with us, with me today. So, yeah, so it's, yeah, the square, the slide with this is checks these boxes and these are the items that were left undone, but knowing that we talked about, well, let's put the tuck pointing into a routine annual maintenance budget and maybe do some more interior improvements.
There's probably something else, we could be there tonight at 5:30. I'm sure there will be questions and feedback from the community once you give them information.
Should we be there tonight?
You can be, because we're just presenting information back. So we're not asking for input.
And we could join remotely as well, sure, and then we wouldn't be so visible.
Yeah.
And I
think it-
promise I won't do any of
Just
that
not
nasty
number
stuff.
526.
Yeah,
or-
I'll be good.
Wouldn't even know how to
Well,
do
they're-
it.
Yeah.
Public may ask questions,
Folder
where
someplace.
are you at now? That's probably gonna be a big question to make. We're not really gonna be able to say. Our place.
Question?
I think the public will say, okay, so you presented this to the board, where's the board at? And that might be helpful if somebody's there to answer that, because it's not our place to answer. Other than the fact that there's been discussions, but I mean,
And the
no
board has
decisions have been made.
discussed it, and, you know, we're seeking input from the public.
Yeah.
That's why this meeting is being held. We see the needs, we've gathered the input from the public. We want more input from the public, but we see the needs with our existing buildings. We have no capacity to build a new building. So the board's leaning towards just doing a good job of maintaining the facilities that we've got.
Shouldn't we have a plan in place though? I mean, we are the board of the school, and we should have a plan to see if the public is in agreement with that.
And this is our plan, we're.
I know, but we talked about all this stuff. I mean, like, what are our needs?
Okay, so. So tonight, as they said, they're not presenting the prioritized, what we saw today,
And no dollars.
and no dollars.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just that, presentation we made where we go through all the listening sessions, what each stakeholder group talked about, showing the commonalities, and then the color chart where we rated each educational space, so red, yellow, or green. That's what we're presenting.
And so what would you recommend for us to have as a response? Based
Well, I would
on
just
what
be
we talked
honest and
about
say,
today?
look, we've discussed this at length, and we're trying to come up with a prioritized list of things that we feel need to be done and trying to attach a dollar value to it. I mean, that's what you've done, and you really haven't decided anything. And that's just being honest with them, and might want to, for shock value, say it's a lot more than we thought it would be, you know?
Yeah, and I think letting them know that this summer I'll tell them that you have different assessments that you looked at. In the summer, you've spent a lot of time looking on how that aligns and prioritizing. There will be another opportunity to come back because the board is they are working on putting a plan together. And we're gonna hold open meetings for the community to get feedback. I mean, if you really feel like we're gonna do this open house, that's exactly what we're doing, and we're gonna have one more opportunity before the board makes any decision to get the community feedback. And I think that's spot on what you're doing. Absolutely, if you want to be there, I think it's great. Visually, they'll see you, they'll probably ask questions, they might pull you aside afterwards, they might ask questions.
If we're not there, does it look like we're not interested?
Well, that's part of it, yes, and that's what we'll be asking too, as you go forward and look at communication, as board members need to be visible and part of the planning. Or part of the communication planning. That shows that you're interested, you guys think it's a good plan, you're elected to be in this position, so their community is gonna look at you to say, is this a good plan? Because they haven't spent hours upon hours going through this and understanding what it means. They're gonna look. And if you're not visible, that will be the same message as. But now, tonight, does everyone need to show up now? So, okay, don't feel like you have to. But I am gonna ask when we do the open house, yeah, I would want each and every one of you there. And that's not Lori walking your community members through this. This is the board walking through each station. I'll be there for support and to help whatever you guys need. But this is your community, your district. You'll be talking with the residents and helping the community members understand what's at each one of those stations.
I want to set this one, because you didn't want to set the last one either. Leave that one.
The list
Gathering, yeah.
That was gathering input. And
Yeah, this would be more like informational, and they might ask some questions, but it's not gonna be, we're asking them questions. So I think it's quite a bit different in that regard.
And I would say too, when we selected this date, it was because we knew the staff would be back. And if we had tried to pull it off in July, no one would have showed up. So, we wanted to do it after the board heard it. So at that time, I didn't know where we'd be. I didn't know we'd be this far along or not. And so I'm not even sure if I think the chiller was still running at that time. So at that time, I would not have implied that you should be there necessarily. It wouldn't have made a huge difference. But now when you're at where you're at, Yeah, this would be another opportunity to be in front of your residents.
So the public meeting is at 5:30. Is there any reason for a board member to be present at the staff presentation at 2:30?
So Anna, you're gonna be there?
Yeah, I'll be there. I mean, I don't think it would hurt, you know, I mean, but, I'll be
I
there.
don't think I can't be at.
Right.
That you might be late for, we don't know. I think your community would be more critical.
Okay, then I would ask that you share out today's presentation with the board so that we have these things in front of us. I think it was very well presented and we know that we've provided input that you'll be making some adjustments to that for our consideration at the next time we meet on the 31st. We'll probably be at the Angry Beaver on the 30th then.
Very possible.
There's no meat raffles yet. Not yet.
Hopefully I'll be there.
Okay.
We'll be
Yeah.
rolling in at 10:30.
All right, anything else related to today's topic? If not, thank you all for being here. Good meeting, and I'll adjourn at 9:03.